The message arrived on a Tuesday. It came not as a dramatic broadcast, but as a quiet ping on one of NASA's deep space listening arrays. Within hours, cryptographers confirmed what humanity had wondered for centuries. We were not alone. As scientists deciphered the signal, they discovered it contained coordinates, specifications, and a formal invitation. The Galactic Alliance, a confederation of 17 spacefaring species, had decided Earth was ready for contact. "They want us to meet them," said Dr. Alan Foster, his voice barely above a whisper as he addressed the hastily assembled United Nations Security Council. "And they've given us exactly 3 Earth months to prepare." The world's governments moved with unprecedented cooperation. The brightest minds in science, diplomacy, and military strategy gathered to plan humanity's response. After much debate, they selected Commander Alex Rogers to lead the mission. "I never expected to be first contact material," Rogers said to his wife the night before departure. His weathered face showed both excitement and apprehension. Just a Navy kid from Ohio who liked looking at stars. The crew selection process identified Lieutenant Olivia Martinez as his second in command. She had degrees in xenolinguistics and cultural anthropology alongside her military training. If they wanted the best of humanity, they should have sent poets and scientists, Martinez told Rogers during their first meeting. "Not soldiers." "Maybe," Rogers replied, "but soldiers know how to come home alive." Earth prepared its 3 most advanced ships, the ECS Horizon, the ECS Endeavour, and the flagship ECS Defiant. These vessels represented the pinnacle of human engineering, with fusion drives, advanced life support, and modest defensive capabilities. The launch day arrived with global celebrations. Humanity watched as their representatives ventured into the stars, carrying hope and uncertainty in equal measure. It took 17 days to reach the meeting coordinates, a nondescript region of space near the orbit of Jupiter. Rogers ordered all 3 ships to maintain formation as they approached the designated area. "Contact imminent," announced the sensor operator, detecting multiple large objects dropping out of something. Not traditional FTL as we understand it. The Alliance ships appeared suddenly, seeming to slide into reality from some unseen dimension. The human crew gasped collectively. The alien vessels were massive. The smallest dwarfed Earth's largest aircraft carrier, while the largest stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern. "My God," whispered Rogers. "They're cities in space." The alien fleet arranged itself in a ceremonial pattern. Lights pulsed across their hulls in complex sequences, creating an almost hypnotic display. "We're receiving a transmission," Martinez reported. "It's using our own communication protocols. They must have studied our technology." The main view screen activated, showing an alien face. The being had features that seemed vaguely reptilian, with iridescent scales and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. "Greetings, humans," the translation came through crisp and clear. "I am Grand Marshal Zexos of the Galactic Alliance. We welcome Earth's representatives." Rogers stepped forward. "Thank you, Grand Marshal. I am Commander Alex Rogers of Earth. We are honored by this historic meeting." The alien's upper eyes narrowed slightly. "Your vessels are smaller than we anticipated." A different alien moved into view, this one with a ridge of bony protrusions and gray-blue skin. "Such tiny ships," it remarked with what sounded like amusement. "How did they even reach this meeting point?" Rogers maintained his diplomatic composure. "Our technology may differ from yours, but it has served us well." "Indeed," said Grand Marshal Zexos, though his tone suggested skepticism. "The Alliance has extended invitation to many developing worlds. Few arrive in such modest vessels." The message was clear. In the grand theater of galactic civilization, humanity had arrived with props rather than proper ships. Martinez leaned close to Rogers. "They're judging us by the size of our fleet." "Let them," Rogers whispered back. "Underestimation might be our first advantage." The human ships moved forward, small but proud. as the enormous alien vessels surrounded them like adults circling children at play. Humanity's first step into the galactic community had begun. They came with hands extended in friendship, even as quiet laughter echoed across space at their tiny fleet. The invitations came swiftly after first contact. The Alliance requested a human delegation board their command vessel for formal discussions. Rogers selected a small team. Himself, Lieutenant Martinez, Dr. Nathan Clark, their chief science officer, and Major Diane Wright, who headed security. "Remember, we represent all of Earth," Rogers told them as they prepared to board the shuttle. "Stay alert but diplomatic." The Alliance ship's docking bay was cavernous, large enough to house all 3 human vessels with room to spare. Species of all descriptions moved about with purpose, barely glancing at the human arrivals. "Their artificial gravity feels heavier," whispered Clark. His steps labored. "Designed for the Craxians," explained their guide, a slender being with translucent skin who introduced herself as Emissary Tala. They evolved on a high-gravity world. The humans were led to a vast chamber where representatives from various Alliance species sat in a semicircle. Grand Marshal Zexos occupied the central position, flanked by military and scientific advisors. "The humans arrive," announced a hulking figure with mottled red skin and prominent facial ridges. "I am More Commander Drozik of the Craxian Empire." Rogers noted how the other aliens seemed to defer to the Craxians, who appeared to hold significant influence within the Alliance. "We've reviewed your technological capabilities," said Drozik, displaying scans of the human ships on a holographic projector. "Primitive fusion drives, minimal defensive capabilities, and rudimentary weapon systems." Martinez bristled but maintained her composure. "Your assessment is accurate," Rogers replied evenly. "We're still developing our space technology." A ripple of what sounded like laughter moved through the assembly. "You call those warships?" Drozik continued. "They wouldn't survive an encounter with even our civilian vessels." "They aren't warships," Rogers clarified. "They're exploration vessels with defensive capabilities." Another Alliance member, a being with multiple compound eyes, leaned forward. "The tiny fleet carries no significant threat. We should classify them as Level 2 integration candidates." While the discussion continued, Martinez excused herself. She had noticed a data terminal nearby and wanted to gather information. Using the translation device provided by their hosts, she discreetly accessed public Alliance records. What she found disturbed her deeply. When the diplomatic session ended, the humans were shown to their quarters. Once alone, Martinez revealed her discoveries. "I found records of 17 species classified as Level 2 integration candidates over the past century," she said, displaying the information on her tablet. 15 of them no longer exist in Alliance records." "What happened to them?" asked Major Wright. "Unknown. They simply vanish from all documentation after a certain point. The remaining 2 were reclassified as protectorate species with limited rights." Rogers studied the data. So being deemed non-threatening might actually be dangerous. "There's more," Martinez continued. "The Craxians specifically have annexed territories of at least 3 primitive species in the past decade, all legally sanctioned by Alliance protocols." Dr. Clark removed his glasses. "They're not evaluating us for friendship. They're determining if we're prey or competition." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. "We need to be careful about how we present ourselves," Rogers finally said. "Too weak, and we might be conquered. Too aggressive, and we could be deemed a threat to be eliminated." The following day, the humans attended an Alliance military demonstration. Massive battleships performed synchronized maneuvers, weapon systems capable of planetary destruction were displayed, and armies of robotic soldiers marched in formation. "Impressive," Rogers commented diplomatically. "Standard Alliance peacekeeping forces," Drozik replied with obvious pride. "Perhaps your tiny fleet would like to demonstrate its capabilities next." The question was clearly meant to embarrass, but Rogers smiled calmly. "We'd be honored, though our demonstration might not be what you expect." Later, as they returned to their quarters, Martinez pulled Rogers aside. "Commander, I intercepted communications about an emerging threat. Something called Voidwalkers has attacked an Alliance outpost." Rogers nodded grimly. "Then we might get to show them what humans can do sooner than they anticipated." The human delegation returned to their ships that night, aware that the Alliance's mockery of their tiny fleet might soon be the least of their concerns. The emergency alarms blared throughout the Alliance command ship. Rogers and Martinez had been in the middle of negotiations when the blaring sirens interrupted their meeting. "What's happening?" Rogers asked as Alliance officials rushed past them. Grand Marshal Zexos appeared on the main view screen, his usually composed features showing clear concern. "All delegates to secure positions. Voidwalker vessels have breached the outer defense perimeter." The humans quickly made their way to the observation deck. Through the massive viewing ports, they watched as space itself seemed to ripple. Strange ships emerged from the distortions. Dark, angular vessels that moved with unnatural precision. "Those are the Voidwalkers?" Dr. Clark asked, adjusting his glasses to better see the distant battle. "Yes," replied Emissary Tala, who had appeared beside them. "They arrived in our galaxy 3 cycles ago. No communication, no demands, just destruction." The Alliance fleet mobilized impressively. Massive battleships formed defensive lines, their weapon systems charging with visible energy. "The Alliance has superior firepower in numbers," Major Wright observed. "This should be over quickly." But as they watched, something unexpected happened. The enormous Alliance ships struggled to target the Voidwalker vessels, which moved with incredible speed and agility. The smaller alien craft darted between the Alliance behemoths, striking with precision at vulnerable points. "Why aren't your targeting systems locking on?" Rogers asked. War Commander Drozik had joined them, his expression grim. "The Voidwalkers emit some kind of interference field. Our systems can't maintain lock." Martinez studied the battle intently. "Your ships are too big," she stated. "They can't maneuver quickly enough to compensate for the targeting issues." Drozik bristled at the criticism but didn't dispute it. Rogers watched as a pattern emerged in the Voidwalker attacks. "They're moving in coordinated sequences," he said. "There's a pattern to their movements." "Commander Rogers," Dr. Clark called from a nearby terminal. "I've been analyzing their attack vectors. Look at this." The human team gathered around the screen where Clark had mapped the Voidwalker movements. "They repeat attack patterns every 7 minutes," Martinez noted. "And they always approach from these 3 vectors." Rogers turned to Drozik. "Your ships are fighting individually, but the Voidwalkers are operating as a unified swarm. You need to coordinate your defense. We don't need combat advice from a species that can barely leave its own solar system." Drozik growled, though his eyes betrayed uncertainty as another Alliance cruiser erupted in flames. Rogers keyed his communicator. "ECS Defiant. This is Commander Rogers. Captain Miller, begin running battle simulations using the data we're sending you. I want tactical options." "Understood, Commander," came the reply. For hours, the humans watched as the Alliance struggled against the attack. Despite their massive ships and advanced weapons, they seemed unable to effectively counter the Voidwalker tactics. "Their command ship is particularly vulnerable," Martinez observed. "See how the others adjust their positions to protect it." By the time Alliance officials called for an emergency strategy session, the humans had compiled a comprehensive analysis of Voidwalker tactics. "We've identified weaknesses in their formation," Rogers explained, displaying the human analysis on the council room screens. "And we have suggestions for countering their approach." War Commander Drozik scoffed. "What could your tiny fleet possibly offer against an enemy that challenges even the Alliance?" "Sometimes," Rogers replied calmly, "size isn't the advantage you think it is." Grand Marshal Zexos studied the human analysis carefully. "These observations are surprisingly insightful. Humans have extensive experience with asymmetric warfare," Martinez explained. "Fighting against superior forces requires different thinking." As they spoke, another alarm sounded. The Voidwalkers had destroyed the Alliance's primary defense station and were approaching the command ship itself. "We need immediate action," Zexos declared. "War Commander, implement the human suggestions." Drozik hesitated, his pride visibly warring with practicality. Or Rogers offered, "Allow us to demonstrate. Your tiny ships against Voidwalkers." Drozik laughed bitterly. "That would be suicide." Rogers smiled. "Perhaps. But sometimes the Predator doesn't see the small creatures until it's too late." The Alliance leaders exchanged glances, desperation beginning to override their previous dismissal of human capabilities. "Very well, Commander Rogers," Grand Marshal Zexos finally said. "Show us what your tiny fleet can do." Rogers wasted no time. ECS Defiant, Horizon, Endeavor, battle stations. Prepare for immediate engagement. The 3 human vessels moved into position, seeming absurdly small against the backdrop of Alliance battleships and the approaching Voidwalker threat. "This is Captain Sam Lee of the Horizon," came a calm voice over the comms. "We're ready, Commander." "ECS Endeavor standing by," reported Captain Ellie Johnson. "Engineer Jackson has our systems optimized." Inside the Alliance command ship, the alien leaders watched skeptically as the human vessels broke formation. "What are they doing?" Drozik demanded. "They're separating." "Standard human wolf pack tactics," explained Martinez. "Independent movement, coordinated strikes." On the main view screen, the 3 Earth ships accelerated toward the Voidwalker formation. Instead of maintaining a defensive posture like the Alliance vessels, they increased speed directly toward the enemy. "They're going to be destroyed," Emissary Tala whispered. But something unexpected happened. As the Voidwalkers adjusted to intercept the human ships, the Earth vessels executed a series of rapid, unpredictable maneuvers that seemed impossible for craft their size. "How are they changing direction so quickly?" asked an Alliance science officer. "Differential thrust vectoring," Dr. Clark explained. "Our ships sacrifice size for maneuverability." The Alliance leaders watched in astonishment as the human vessels darted between Voidwalker formations, their movement patterns seemingly chaotic yet precisely calculated. "Captain Lee, execute pattern Delta," Rogers ordered. The Horizon suddenly cut its main engines, rotated 180 degrees while maintaining its forward momentum, and fired precisely targeted shots at a passing Voidwalker vessel. The enemy ship, unprepared for the unorthodox maneuver, took critical damage. "Impossible," Drozik muttered. "That targeting solution should have failed against their interference." "We're not using automated targeting," Martinez explained. "Captain Lee is firing manually." On the Endeavor, Engineer Leah Jackson activated a system that had been kept hidden until now. "Stealth swarm deployed," she reported. Dozens of small, unmanned drones launched from concealed bays on the Endeavor, each no larger than a shuttlecraft. They spread out in a carefully choreographed pattern. "What are those?" Grand Marshal Zexos asked, leaning forward with new interest. "Combat drones," Rogers replied. "They extend our sensor range and provide additional firing platforms." The swarm encircled a cluster of Voidwalker ships, confusing their sensors with multiple small targets while gathering targeting data. "The Voidwalker's jamming field affects large targeting arrays," Martinez explained. "But our drones use a distributed network of smaller sensors to triangulate positions." On the ECS Defiant, Tactical Officer Ben Rivera coordinated the attack. "We have confirmed targeting solutions on 6 Voidwalker vessels. Permission to engage." "Fire," Rogers ordered. The combined firepower of the human ships and drone swarm struck simultaneously from multiple vectors. 6 Voidwalker ships erupted in silent explosions. They destroyed more in one attack than our entire fleet has managed in hours," an Alliance officer said in disbelief. The remaining Voidwalkers attempted to regroup, but the human vessels continued their aggressive, unpredictable movements. The drones adapted their formation continuously, preventing the enemy from establishing effective countermeasures. "Captain Johnson, move Endeavor to position Beta," Rogers directed. "Captain Lee, prepare for synchronized strike on their command vessel. The human ships executed a complex series of maneuvers that had clearly been practiced extensively. They attacked from multiple angles, their coordination flawless despite their apparently chaotic movements. "I don't understand," Drazik admitted reluctantly. "How is your tiny fleet so effective?" "Because we designed our ships and tactics specifically for asymmetric warfare," Rogers explained. "We always assumed we'd face technologically superior opponents." The battle continued for another hour, but the tide had clearly turned. The Voidwalker formation broke apart, their remaining vessels retreating into the spatial distortions from which they had emerged. As the human ships regrouped, the Alliance command center fell silent. The tiny fleet that had been mocked only days before had just accomplished what the mighty Alliance forces could not. Grand Marshal Zexos approached Rogers, his four eyes blinking in what appeared to be their species' expression of respect. "It seems," he said slowly, "that we have much to learn from Earth." The Alliance Command Center buzzed with activity. 2 days had passed since the human ships had driven off the Voidwalker attack, and the initial shock had given way to urgent planning. "The Voidwalkers have launched a major offensive against the Centauri outpost," Grand Marshal Zexos announced to the assembled leaders. "It's a critical supply hub for 3 systems." Rogers studied the tactical display. The Centauri outpost was a massive space station orbiting a gas giant with extensive defensive capabilities. But if the Voidwalkers took it, they would gain control of a strategic choke point. "Our fleet is still regrouping from previous engagements," Drazik admitted reluctantly. "We can't mount an effective defense for at least 3 days." "The outpost won't last that long," Martinez observed. All eyes turned to Rogers. "Commander," Grand Marshal Zexos said, "would Earth be willing to assist in this matter?" Rogers exchanged glances with his team. "We'll need additional resources. Our ships performed well in the previous engagement, but we have limited ammunition and fuel reserves." "You'll have whatever you need," Zexos promised. Within hours, Operation Small Thunder was underway. The human vessels had been resupplied with Alliance technology that had been hastily adapted to fit their systems. Engineer Jackson worked tirelessly with Alliance technicians to integrate the new components. "The modifications are holding," she reported from the Endeavor. Power output increased by 37%. On the bridge of the Defiant, Rogers addressed the combined human forces. "This will be different from our last engagement. We'll be defending a fixed position against superior numbers." Captain Lee nodded from the horizon. "Like Thermopylae in space." "Precisely," Rogers agreed. "We'll use the gas giants' rings for cover and set up crossfire zones to funnel their approach." Lieutenant Martinez prepared for her own mission. She would lead a special operations team on a dangerous assignment that Rogers had initially opposed. "It's too risky," he had argued. "Boarding a Voidwalker vessel." "We need to understand their technology," Martinez countered. "This may be our only chance." As the human ships approached the Centauri outpost, they received the first reports of Voidwalker activity. "Spatial distortions detected," announced the sensor operator. "Multiple signatures, at least 30 vessels." "That's 3 times what we faced before," Captain Johnson noted grimly. Rogers remained calm. "Deploy the drone swarm in scatter pattern Epsilon." "Captain Lee, position Horizon behind the 3rd moon." "Captain Johnson, take Endeavor into the ring system." The human vessels moved with precision, taking positions that seemed random to observers on the outpost, but formed part of a carefully orchestrated trap. Voidwalkers emerging from distortion fields, reported Tactical Officer Rivera. "They're approaching in standard attack formation." "Wait for them to commit," Rogers ordered. "Let them think the outpost is defended only by its own systems." The Voidwalkers advanced confidently toward the outpost, apparently unaware of the human presence. When the lead vessels crossed the invisible line Rogers had designated, he gave the command. "Execute Small Thunder." The gas giant's rings seemed to come alive as the Endeavor and its drone swarm activated simultaneously. The Horizon emerged from behind the moon, engines at full power. The Defiant revealed itself from within a sensor shadow created by the outpost's own emissions. The Voidwalkers found themselves caught in a three-dimensional crossfire, with nowhere to retreat. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Martinez and her team launched their specialized craft toward a Voidwalker vessel on the formation's edge. Using the chaos of the main battle as cover, they approached undetected. Preparing for magnetic attachment, Martinez reported. Breach team ready. On the Defiant, Rogers watched as the tiny craft attached itself to the much larger enemy vessel. Lieutenant, you have 10 minutes before we draw too much attention your way. The Special Operations team cut through the Voidwalker, hull using tools adapted from Alliance technology. Martinez led them through the breach, into unknown territory. Inside the Alliance Command Center, War Commander Drozik watched in amazement as the human tactics unfolded. These humans, he said quietly to Zexos, they fight like nothing I've seen in 2 centuries of warfare. Yes, Zexos agreed. And to think we mocked their tiny fleet. As the battle raged around the Centauri outpost, the tide slowly turned. The human vessels danced through space, striking with surgical precision despite being dramatically outnumbered. And somewhere inside an enemy vessel, Martinez and her team were about to change the course of the war. Inside the captured Voidwalker vessel, Martinez and her team moved carefully through dark corridors. The ship's interior was unlike anything they had seen before. Surfaces that seemed both organic and mechanical, pulsing with an eerie blue light. Air composition is breathable, whispered Sergeant Kyle Peters, checking his equipment. Temperature stable at 15 Celsius. Martinez nodded. Stay alert. We have no idea what we're dealing with. They reached what appeared to be the command center. Strange symbols flashed across curved displays, while machinery hummed with unfamiliar rhythms. Most surprising was the lack of crew. It's automated, Martinez realized, studying the control interfaces. The entire ship is controlled by this central system. That explains their coordinated movements, said Peters. They're not individual ships. They're parts of a collective. While her team secured the area, Martinez activated her communication device. Commander Rogers, we've secured the vessel. No crew present. The ships appear to be drone platforms controlled by some kind of artificial intelligence. On the Defiant, Rogers received the news with interest. That's valuable intelligence. Download what you can and plant the package. Outside, the battle continued. The human vessels executed complex maneuvers that confused the Voidwalker targeting systems. Captain Lee had positioned the horizon within the gas giant's upper atmosphere, using the turbulence to mask his approach before emerging to strike at vulnerable enemy positions. Alliance Command is receiving our tactical data, reported Officer Rivera. They're adapting their remaining ships to support our formation. For the first time, the massive Alliance vessels were working in concert with the nimble human ships. The combination proved devastatingly effective. Back at Alliance headquarters, Engineer Jackson worked alongside alien scientists, studying the data streaming from Martinez's team. Look at this propulsion system, she explained, pointing to schematics on the display. It doesn't just move through space, it manipulates space-time itself. A Craxian scientist nodded. Advanced, but not invulnerable. See these emitter nodes. They're critical to maintaining the field. If we could disrupt them, Jackson began. We could render their speed advantage useless. The Craxian finished. War Commander Drozik watched the collaboration with grudging respect. Your engineer has accomplished more in 2 hours than our research division did in months. Grand Marshal Zexos smiled. Perhaps we should reconsider our classification system. Size of fleet clearly doesn't correlate with species capability. The battle at Centauri Outpost concluded with a decisive victory. 17 Voidwalker vessels destroyed, 3 disabled, and the remainder retreated. The human ships sustained damage but remained operational. Most importantly, Martinez's team returned with invaluable data and samples of Voidwalker technology. 1 week later, representatives from across the Alliance gathered for a formal council meeting. The humans were invited as honored guests rather than observational participants. The Voidwalker threat continues. Grand Marshal Zexos addressed the assembly. But thanks to our human allies, we now understand our enemy better. Engineer Jackson presented the defense systems she had developed based on the captured technology. By modifying your existing shield harmonics, we can counter their spatial distortion capabilities. War Commander Drozik, who had once dismissed the humans, now stood to address Rogers directly. The Craxian Empire acknowledges the valor and ingenuity of Earth's forces. We would be honored to adopt your tactical doctrines. Alliance military leaders who had previously mocked the tiny fleet now sought human advice on ship design and combat operations. The concept of smaller, more maneuverable vessels had gained significant support. "We've been building bigger ships for centuries," admitted an Alliance admiral. "It never occurred to us that this might become our weakness." Late that evening, Rogers and Martinez met with Grand Marshal Zexos in private. "We're prepared to commit additional Earth forces to this conflict," Rogers said. "But we want assurances of Earth's standing after the threat is resolved." Zexos nodded solemnly. "The Alliance has reconsidered Earth's classification. You will be offered full membership status, with equal voting rights on the Council." "And the other Level 2 species?" Martins asked pointedly. "Their status will be reviewed," Zexos promised. "This experience has taught us that our evaluation criteria were flawed." As they left the meeting, Rogers allowed himself a small smile. "Not bad for a tiny fleet." Martinez chuckled. "Just wait until they see what Earth can really build now that we understand their technology." 3 months passed. During that time, the human fleet grew. Earth's shipyards worked around the clock, producing vessels that combined human innovation with Alliance technology. What had once been a tiny fleet of 3 ships had expanded to 37 specialized craft. The Alliance War Council gathered on their new command ship. The previous one had been destroyed in a Voidwalker counterattack 2 weeks earlier. "Intelligence confirms our suspicions," Rogers reported, pointing to the star map. "This system contains the Voidwalker's central hub. All ship movements originate from this location." Grand Marshal Zexos studied the data. "The defenses are formidable. Even with our combined fleets, a direct assault would be costly. Which is why we won't attack directly," said Martinez, now promoted to commander. She highlighted different sectors on the map. "We'll use the strategy that has worked for us from the beginning, being underestimated." The plan was bold. Captain Lee would lead a task force of Alliance battleships in what appeared to be a full frontal assault, a diversion to draw Voidwalker forces away from their command center. Meanwhile, Commander Martinez would lead a stealth team to infiltrate the hub itself. "And the Defiant?" asked War Commander Drozik, who had become one of Rogers' strongest supporters. "We'll lead a surgical strike force," Rogers explained. "Once Martinez's team disables their defense grid, we'll move in with precision attacks on critical nodes." 2 days later, Operation Final Thunder began. Captain Lee's forces engaged the Voidwalker defense fleet near the system's outer boundary. The massive Alliance ships, now equipped with human-designed tactical systems, performed with newfound agility. Enemy forces responding exactly as predicted, Lee reported as Voidwalker ships moved to intercept his fleet, counting 70-plus vessels diverted from the central hub. In the shadow of a small moon, Commander Martinez prepared her infiltration team. Their ship, the ECS Shadow, represented the pinnacle of human Alliance cooperation, a vessel designed specifically for stealth operations. "Approach vector clear," reported her pilot. Voidwalker sensors focused on Captain Lee's battle group. Martinez nodded to her team. "Let's remind them why they should have taken the tiny ships seriously from the start." The Shadow slipped past the remaining Voidwalker patrols, its advanced stealth systems rendering it nearly invisible. When they reached the central hub, a massive structure that pulsed with the same eerie blue energy they had seen in the captured ship, Martins deployed her Special Forces team. "We've identified the central control node," she reported to Rogers. "Moving to position now." Commander Rogers waited with the strike force, 20 specialized attack vessels hidden behind a dense asteroid field. Engineer Jackson had equipped each with weapons designed specifically to target Voidwalker vulnerabilities. Remember, Rogers told his captains, once Martinez takes down the defense grid, we'll have exactly 7 minutes before their backup systems activate. The infiltration proceeded with precision. Martinez's team encountered automated defense systems, but no living operators, confirming their theory that the entire Voidwalker fleet was controlled by artificial intelligence. Placing disruptors now, Martinez reported as her engineers attached devices to key systems. Countdown initiated. When the signal came, Rogers ordered immediate action. All vessels, execute attack pattern Omega. Target primary nodes only. The human strike force emerged from hiding, accelerating toward the now vulnerable hub. The few Voidwalker ships that remained to defend it were caught unprepared. They had expected a massive fleet, not the precise, coordinated attack of smaller vessels that seemed to anticipate their every move. Captain Lee, seeing the strike force engage, executed the second phase of their plan. All ships, disengage and move to secondary positions. Prepare for coordinated strike. The Voidwalker ships that had been drawn away now found themselves out of position, unable to return in time to defend their hub. Inside the central structure, Martinez reached the core, a pulsing crystalline formation that appeared to be the Voidwalker's central processing system. Target secured, she reported. Placing the shutdown sequence now. The combined human alliance attack struck with devastating effectiveness. The specialized weapons found their marks, while Martinez's team completed their mission at the heart of enemy operations. 3 hours later, it was over. The Voidwalker threat that had terrorized the galaxy for years had been neutralized in a single decisive operation.